Howdy there, folks, it's Geist, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the recent buff slash rework that happened with Oathkeepers. They changed the PvE damage bonus. That's the one where you gain bonus damage for holding past the full draw. See that little bar charging up in the left corner? The higher that bar goes, the more damage that deals. They made it deal more damage overall. I think the percentage went up by like 50%, like 150 to 200% or something like that. Doesn't really matter, it just went up. And they also made it more front-loaded. So what that means is, in theory, you should have more of the damage bonus overall towards the front of that bar. And just to go ahead and showcase this, I'm going to use Carl here. And we're going to test a couple different points. Now, one thing to note, I'm dealing 213 damage. If I hit him just before it lands, oh, I did it too. Before it actually hits that first little notch, notice that it's still 213. So in order to get any kind of damage bonus, it happens in increments. It's between each of those little notches there. Now, so let's say, it goes to 354 if I hit that first notch. If I go past the second notch, 484. And if I go past that third notch, it's 572. There is no additional damage bonus for getting it to full or holding it past that. It's still 572. So it's always going to be one of those first three. We're just going to call it damage tier 1, 2, and 3 for the purpose of this video. So we're going to start off. I'm going to put 6 arrows into him for damage tier for nothing, without activating the perk whatsoever, just to see what the DPS is. $152. So now for the first damage tier. $167, which is just a little bit higher. $178. Now for the third tier. And it's actually a little lower. In most of the bows that I've used this with and in all the testing that I've done, it seems like the sweet spot is right there at the second tier of damage. That seems to be kind of the peak DPS, so to speak. Now, one disclaimer here, I'm going to talk about a lot of DPS with this. This is not a viable option to DPS a boss with. Case in point, we did like, what, about 170 there in 6 shots? Grab some ammo for this just so you can see. That's what a real DPS option looks like. And again, you know, these numbers are all subject to change, so don't pay too much attention to the exact number itself and go, oh, well, I did more with this. Well, my weapon stat is at 140 right now. I can get it up to 160 with other armor, just not with Oathkeepers currently. So all of these numbers are going to look different if you try to do these tests yourself and if you have a different weapon stat than me, so do keep that in mind. But in general, this is just better. Most heavy weapons are going to completely out DPS this. Most special weapons are going to completely out DPS this. This is not a viable DPS strategy. I know it's a little unfortunate because we were kind of hoping this would be like a Lucky Pants situation, which if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that now. I've just made my weapon stat actually lower than what I just had with Oath. It's now at 120. And I don't know why I just shot him with my bow. That's with 6 bullets of this, which that's not even a full DPS strat with this thing. And it happened way faster. What you would typically do if you're trying to DPS with this thing is you're going to like dump 2 mags. Or at least just shoot until the buff goes away. Buff went away, 940. It's it's kind of crazy. Lucky Pants is a really good DPS option, and in my personal opinion, one of the only ones that's actually viable to DPS a boss or a champion or anything like that. So keep that in mind. This really isn't like it's just not a viable DPS option. So if any of you were just looking for that answer, no, this doesn't work for bossing. It's really not that good for champions either. It's just not that good. Even at peak performance, it's really not that great. Even if I use it with something that does more damage than say this, which I'm going to show you a couple of other options as well. Like using this new bow. Same thing, 6 shots. Only, you know, I'm going to actually use the perk. We're going to aim for that sweet spot. I also probably need to re-equip Oathkeepers in order for this to work. $170 was our best so far with the bow. Keep that in mind. 184. That's a little bit better. I think I forgot one shot, though. But it doesn't matter. I'll show you the next one. Here's the Monarch. And one thing to note on these, I don't think I've said this yet, but remember that the supplemental damage for some of these exotics doesn't actually work on this. The Monarch is right around 200. I kind of overdrew one of them and underdrew one of them, but it's fine. About around 200. So when I say supplemental damage, I mean the poison from the Monarch, the broadhead from Wishender, the Seekers from Hierarchy of Needs. None of those get buffed by Oathkeepers. The only thing that it buffs is the base damage of the bow. It also does not work with Tremors. And in fact, it works really, really badly. I'm not even going to show you the DPS of this because it doesn't matter. But it works really badly with Tremors. Watch this. That's proc. Tremors are going off. I'm sitting there aiming. Oh, look at that. It just made the bar vanish because the tremors were going off. Something about the tremors erases the bar on this and disables it. So it just flat out does not work on any bow that has tremors, so don't try to use it with that. Moving on to the next one, I'll go ahead and show you Tikus, which the Monarch is around 200 right now, so Tikus is a little bit different because I do have to prime him. $195. Pretty daggum similar. Now we'll do Hierarchy of Needs, also just 6 shots. Hierarchy's a little different though because we got to get that guidance ring procced. Oh, and you know what? I'm not even doing it right. See, it's so easy to forget that you have to wait for that little bar. Like, if you're like me, you just try to shoot the bow as fast as possible. So to have to go through that extra step of waiting on it to charge can be kind of annoying. At least, that's what I think personally. And we haven't even gotten into another issue of it yet, which I'll cover in just a moment after I finish showcasing this. 292. Hierarchy is pretty solid, but remember, you gotta do this little thing. And you'll have to occasionally reproc those. On to Wishender. Which, by the way, yes, other bows do work with that now, which is kind of cool. It makes Wishender's damage absurd. But we won't normally have that, so I just wanted to showcase that fun little interaction. Which, that has nothing to do with Oathkeeper. I wasn't even proccing the Oathkeeper thing there. But, back to Oathkeeper. Wishender is the second highest. Hierarchy is technically a little bit higher, although I will say that it is a little bit obnoxious to have to deal with the little ring thing, but it is still technically higher. The point is, though, trying to do this with at the peak of damage for Oathkeepers, which is hitting that little second tier of damage on the bar right there. no version of this with any bow comes anywhere close to something that an actual heavy would do, or even the Lucky Pants, which is higher than some heavies, or even just a special. Like, I wish I had a special that was kind of comparable that I could think of here to test this with. Really, I just have this sniper, which isn't exactly, it's not going to be exactly the same, just because it's going to shoot faster and I'm not actually going up to 6 shots. And I even missed a headshot, but it's still way above. But even if I continue adding shots with a huge gap in the middle, and I'm still missing headshots, it's still above. I'm doing really terrible damage with a sniper right now. Like, you would just... And that's one thing. The DPS meter does go slower and slower and slower, and it will lower over time. But even doing piss poor damage with a sniper like that, I'm still, especially initially, way above anything what they would do. For the life of me, he flinches through that second shot every time. It's just not even close. So this is really just not a viable damage option whatsoever. And I want to show you guys one more thing, because you're probably like, oh, well, why do you keep comparing it to specials and heavies and stuff like that? That's not what they're for. It's to boost the damage of your primary, so it's still going to be better, right? Bigger numbers are better, right? Well, we're going to do the Wish Ender test one more time by aiming at the peak of damage, which is that second tier. $225. Now I'm just going to shoot Wish Ender like I normally would if I wasn't using Oath with no buff. You see how it's higher? What happens with Wish Ender is it almost goes in reverse. The damage gets higher because Broadhead isn't being buffed. And so for things like Wish Ender and Le Monarch, they just do better without even using Oath at all. Just shooting them normally as fast as possible. Oathkeeper really doesn't help a lot of these exotic options. And if you're running a bow and something like a Grandmaster or some higher end PvE content, you're probably going to want to run something like Wish Ender or Le Monarch anyways, because they intrinsically stun champions and they do a heck of a lot of damage. Oath just does nothing for them. Even Hierarchy of Needs. What were we earlier? I think it was like 280 or something like that. Let me get this perk going. Alright, so just shooting 6 as quick as I can. $281. Now we're going to use the Oath perk again. $263. See? It's a little bit lower, and it's because all of those Seekers are not being buffed by this. So for any of the exotic bows, Oath is definitely not worth using. And then even for like a non-exotic bow, back to a legendary, I'm going to use my little Archer's Gambit bow here. 6 arrows, quick as I can. $169. Now I'm going to use the Archer's Gambit. Excuse me, Adamantine Brace. That's where it's higher. So really, the best case use scenario is if you're somebody that tends to pace your shots a little bit more, you don't shoot them as fast as you can, this is good for legendary bows. But again, the difference is really not that huge. You probably would be fine just shooting the bow normally. And if you're using a legendary bow in PvE content, you're probably using something like an incandescent or bolt shot bow for the ad clear. So you're definitely not trying to DPS, certainly a boss or a champ or anything like that. So unfortunately, guys, for me, I'm just going to have to kind of give this one a hard pass. I do like Oathkeepers. I think they offer especially a lot of great benefits in PvP because being able to hold the charge indefinitely is great. The AE bonus is really good if you're someone that likes to shoot while jumping a lot. It does do some good stuff, but it's really still more of a PvP only exotic. Uh, while yes, it does technically make legendary bows have higher DPS and only legendary bows, it's just who's going to be doing anything with like that? You should not. You should absolutely not use this to DPS anything bigger than a dreg. A bow should either be one-shotting some trash mobs, or it should be, used as some sort of utility like some of these exotics have for their champion stunning, things like that. They're good for their burst damage, but when you have to slow it down with that charge, it's kind of annoying. And even then, even if this was a viable option, watch this. I'm gonna turn the boss hostile. He's gonna get his little missiles at me. Trying to sit here and like hit that, like charge and keep an eye on the little bar that's charging while also trying not to get vaporized by the boss. That's really annoying. It's just completely impractical, and I think that's the biggest drawback for it, is that you have to almost keep an eye on that bar to try to time it at the perfect point to optimize a DPS that isn't even optimal to begin with. So I know I'm kind of dogging on this one a lot. I'm going to leave it at that. You guys can formulate your own opinions if you want, but I think Bungie's still kind of missing this one. I really wish that instead they would just get rid of this charging bar here, because it counteracts trying to do higher damage with a bow, because you're having to slow down how fast you're firing the arrow. And the fact that it doesn't come into play until the bow is already fully drawn is silly, because for most usage with a bow, you're going to shoot it as soon as it's fully drawn, or even a little under if you're just trying to get those arrows out as quick as possible. And so having to wait is just really counterintuitive, and it's just kind of annoying. And I know some people will say, oh, well, it's meant for more burst damage. Well, yeah, this does enable a lightweight bow to be able to one-shot some mobs that it wouldn't normally be able to, like, say, a Legionnaire. Oh, these are yellow bars. But, boom. Now it one-shot stuff it wouldn't normally be able to do. So, I can't argue with that. For the burst damage, it is kind of neat. But I could sit there and I could stare at this angry Legionnaire that's coming at me. Oh, that was a mistake. They're all going to get me now. But I could sit there and go like this, and I got to wait for it to charge and one-shot him. Or I could just shoot him a couple times and be done. So, yes, the bigger numbers are tempting, but don't let that fool you. Overall, the damage output is still lower, and I can't stress that enough. And it's also very impractical to have to watch the bar on the left. So, again, I kind of wish they would rework these to be more like Lucky Pants. Maybe something like get rid of that charging bar and it gets like a stacking damage bonus for every crit you hit or something like that. That would be pretty cool. And have it stack up to like 10 times. Because then a bow, especially something like an Archer's Gambit bow, could rev up and really start to deal some interesting damage. Especially if it, maybe it wasn't just crit hits, maybe it's just hits in general. Well, then something like Wishinder could be crazy because it's doing 3 hits every single time it hits, and it's going to ramp up super fast. I don't know. I feel like there's a bunch of other ways that could make this more relevant. I think people might be tempted to try it at first, and with the bigger numbers you might be fooled. But again, I really wouldn't bother. Anyways, folks, I'm going to quit ranting on this. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know what you think of this format. I really like the new shooting range here. It's been a whole lot of fun. I kind of wish they would put some PvP dummies in here just so that we could, actually test PvP numbers without me still having to have live subjects. But that's okay. Maybe they'll add that in the future. Anyways, folks, thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful. Like, sub, all that fun stuff. And please, feel free to look in the description of the video. I've got a link to our Discord if you want to join the Geist family. We got a bunch of cool people in there. It's a really chill and fun place. And if you want to just come hang out and talk about Destiny stuff or just game stuff in general, feel free to join. But anyways, folks, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.